Welcome to the Ultimate Guide to Candlestick Patterns, Episode 1. This is a comprehensive course and it's going to cover every detail about candlesticks and candlestick patterns and how they are used for trading. In this first episode, I'll start with the basics and different kinds of candles that you see on the charts, and I'll explain how they are interpreted and what they tell us about the market. Without wasting any more time, let's get started. Alright, here we go. First, let's see how a candlestick is constructed. Each candle is made by 4 pieces of information: opening price, closing price, highest price, and lowest price in a time period. For example, if we are considering candlesticks in 1-day time frame, the price that the financial asset opened in a day, the price that is closed at the end of that day, and highest and lowest prices during that day. Or if, for example, we're considering it in 1-hour time frame, the opening price in an hour, the closing price at the end of the hour, and highest and lowest prices during that hour. So in each candle, as you can see, we have 4 information. Here it shows the opening price, here the closing price by considering the closing price is higher than the open price, here the highest price, and here the lowest price. The area you see here, the thick part of the candle, is called body, or some calls it real body, and it's actually the range between opening price and closing price in that session. When the closing price is higher than the opening price in the session, the body is usually represented by green color. And when the closing price is lower than the opening price, it's usually represented by red color. The thin parts of the candle that you see here above and below the body are called shadows, or some calls it wicks. The one that is above the body is called upper shadow, and the one that is below the body is called lower shadow. The top of the upper shadow shows the highest price that is reached in the session, and the bottom of the lower shadow shows the lowest price of the session. The body is usually the most important part of a candlestick, and the shadows are usually considered as price fluctuations. Especially in daily time frame, open and close are very important emotionally, because the opening price of a day can give us insight into the direction of that day. All the news and fundamental factors overnight are gathered to be reflected in one point, the opening hours of the market, and we may see morning attack, which is large buying or selling orders that is placed by larger traders to move the market. And the closing price is also important, and we can see large emotional effects. It's also very important among technical analysts and algorithm trading, because most of the confirmations are based on closing prices, and also many of the tools and indicators use closing prices. And this importance is not only on daily time frame, and the opening and closing prices in every time frame and every financial market is considered important, because by knowing the open and close and also low and high of each time period, you can have a view on the status of the bulls and bears and realize which of them had the upper hand in the session. Trading is very similar to fighting, a battle between bulls and bears. Bulls push the price up and bears push the price down. It's actually a fight between buyers and sellers, or in other words, supply and demand. When more and more people are interested to buy, this causes the demand to exceed the supply and the price goes up, and the bulls become the winner of the fight. And when more and more people are interested to sell, this causes the supply to exceed the demand and the price goes down, and bears take the control of the market. Always remember that the price at any given time is the result of the battle between buyers and sellers. So when you see a green candle like this, where the closing price is higher than the open price, it means that in that session, the bulls had the upper hand, took the control of the price, and pushed the price up higher than where it opened. In other words, it means that because of a reason, more and more traders were interested to buy in that session, and the demand was greater than the supply in that time period, which caused the price to go up. And when you see a red candle like this, when the closing price is lower than the opening price, it indicates that in that session, the bears had the upper hand and pushed the price lower than the opening price. In other words, it means that because of a reason, more and more traders were interested to sell in that session, and the supply was greater than the demand in that time period, which caused the price to go down. So now you understand why the open and close are important, because by knowing the opening price, you have an early view of the battlefield, and by knowing the closing price, you realize who had the upper hand in that session. So a long green candle, like the one you see here that has actually long body and small shadows, shows a bullish period, and a long red candle shows a bearish period. The longer the body and the smaller the shadows, the stronger the candle. For example, between these two candles, which one of them is shorter, the longer one is more bullish, because in that session, the closing price is much higher than the opening price in compared to the shorter candle, and this shows that bulls were more active and were more aggressive in that session and drove the price to higher levels. The same is correct with red candles. The longer red candle is more bearish, and it shows that sellers were more aggressively pushed the price down in that time period in compared to shorter red candle. And if there is no shadows and we have only body, it's called marubozu. Marubozu is a Japanese word meaning shaved head or bald head. In green marubozu, the opening price and low price are equal, and the close and high are also equal. The candle shows that the buyers were very aggressive in the session, and they had the full control from the open to close. This candle shows high buying pressure, higher than the long green candle we just discussed. And in red marubozu, high is equal to the opening price, and also close and low are equal. This candle shows that sellers were very aggressive in that time period and had the full control of the price from open to close, and it shows high selling pressure, higher than the long red candle. We have other forms of marubozu candles like closing marubozu and opening marubozu. Bullish closing marubozu is like long green candle but without upper shadow. This candle shows that for short time, sellers took the control and drove the price a little lower than the open, but buyers didn't allow the price to go lower and aggressively pushed the price to higher levels considerably with a full control to close the candle. And bearish closing marubozu is like long red candle but without the lower shadow. This candle also shows that although buyers drove the price a little higher than the open, but finally that was the sellers who took the control and aggressively pushed the price down significantly to lower levels with a full control to close the candle. And in bullish opening marubozu, we don't have lower shadow, which means from the opening, buyers had the control, but at the end, sellers had a little control and the price is closed a little lower than high. This candle may be just a little weaker than green marubozu, and we can consider its buying pressure like a long green candle. And in the bearish one, we don't have upper shadow but a small lower shadow. That's similar to the bullish one. We can say this candle is just a little weaker than red marubozu, and its selling pressure can be considered as long red candle. Now you may ask, what if the body is small, or the shadows are long, or one shadow is small and the other long? Let's see what other kinds of candlesticks we have and what they tell us. When we have small body and the shadows are approximately equal, the candlestick is called spinning top. We may have different length of the shadows, like small shadows or long shadows, but the size of the shadows doesn't matter in identifying the spinning top, and that's the body, the small body, that makes the spinning top. Also, the color of the body doesn't matter because we have small movement from open to close, which is not considerable. Spinning top shows a tug of war and a kind of indecision and a standoff between forces of buyers and sellers. In the case of long shadows, it shows that both buyers and sellers were active during the session and could drive the price up or down considerably, but none of them could take the control of the price, and the result was a standoff. Spinning tops are neutral and they don't mean anything but indecision. The smaller the body and the shorter the shadows, the greater is the amount of indecision. Interpretation of being bullish or bearish depends on where it forms on the charts. If it forms following an advance or near a resistance level, in other words, if it forms in the top, it's bearish and it shows that buyers are weakening and there is a possibility for turning of the price. And if it appears following a decline or near support levels, in other words, if it forms in the bottom, it's bullish and it shows that sellers are losing strength and there is a possibility of changing in the direction of the price. Spanning tops become more important when they are part of certain formations with other candlesticks like stars patterns or harami patterns, which we will discuss them in next episodes. Another forms of candlesticks are when we have small body like spanning tops, but one of the shadows is long and the other shadow is small or non-existent in the ideal situation. And based on where they form on the charts, they have different names and different interpretation. Alright, first let's consider this candle where we have long upper shadow and a small lower shadow. And as I said, in the ideal situation, we don't have this small lower shadow, and this makes the candle even more significant because the body is small, which means that we had little movement between open and close, so the color of this candle doesn't matter. The long upper shadow shows that at first buyers had the control and drove the price to higher levels significantly, but then sellers stepped in, took the control of the price and pushed the price down near the level it was opened. So this means that when the price reached to this high level, it was rejected. Buyers were not interested to buy anymore at this price or higher than this price because of a fundamental reason or emotionally or just being expensive. At this high level, the numbers of sellers increased considerably and the price went back near the open level. This candle is naturally bearish and it shows selling pressure, but interpretation of being bullish or bearish depends on where it forms. When this candle forms following an advance or near resistance level, in other words, when it forms in the top, it's called shooting star, and in this situation, it's bearish, showing selling pressure and gives the possibility of changing in the direction of the price. And when this candle forms following a decline or near support level, in other words, when it forms in the bottom, it's called inverted hammer. And in this situation, it's bullish and it shows buying pressure because being in the bottom, we see that buyers were aggressive and were strong enough to drove the price to high levels significantly. So in the bottom, somewhere in support level or following a decline, we have increased buying pressure, which gives the possibility of changing in the direction of the price. And for these candles where the lower shadow is long and the upper shadow is small or non-existent in the ideal situation, the interpretation is the same but in the opposite direction. The long lower shadow shows that at first sellers had the control and pushed the price down significantly, but at the end that was the buyers who had the upper hand and drove the price near the opening level. This candle is naturally bullish and it shows buying pressure, but in practice, being bullish or bearish depends on where it forms. When it forms in the bottom following a decline or near support level, it's called hammer and it shows buying pressure and gives the possibility of changing in the direction of the price. And when it forms in the top following an advance or near resistance level, it's called hanging man and it's bearish, showing selling pressure because the lower shadow shows that sellers were aggressive and strong enough that pushed the price down significantly while the price was in the top near resistance level or in an advance, and this gives the possibility that the price may change its direction. Another forms of candles that are very significant and very important, whether considering individually or in combination with other candles as a pattern, are dojis. Doji and its variations are the most important candles among others, and also they are part of some important patterns that we will discuss them in next episodes. A doji is similar to spinning tops with short shadows, but in this candle, the opening and closing prices are approximately equal or totally equal in the ideal situation, and it looks like a plus sign. Similar to spinning tops, a doji also shows indecision and a standoff between forces of buyers and sellers. And in compared to spinning tops, the degree of indecision for dojis is higher because we don't have body, we have small shadows, and this tells us that buyers and sellers were not active in the session. A doji candlestick is neutral and they don't mean anything but indecision, and the interpretation depends on where it forms or what's the previous candle. For example, a doji that forms in the top following an advance or near resistance levels shows that buyers are weakening and a change in the direction of the price may happen, or when it forms in the bottom following a decline or near support level, it shows that sellers are weakening. As I said, previous candles are also important in interpretation of a doji. For example, a doji after a long candlestick is more significant than being after a short candlestick. Dojis are mostly considered in combination with other candlesticks in a form of a pattern, which I'll explain them in next episodes. We have different kinds of dojis, and not all of them show indecision, and some of them are naturally bullish or bearish. There are 7 kinds of dojis. The first one is the one that we just discussed, and it's called common doji, plus sign doji, doji star. We can just call it doji. Now let me explain the other dojis in detail. The second kind is long leg doji. It's similar to plus sign doji, but with long shadows. It's actually like the spinning top with long shadows, but here we don't have body. In this long leg doji, in compared to plus sign doji, buyers and sellers were more active, and each of them had the control for some time and could push the price up and down significantly. But finally, there was a standoff and the price closed approximately in the opening level, and this shows indecision among buyers and sellers. Long leg doji is neutral like plus sign doji, and it means nothing but indecision, and the interpretation is exactly the same depending on where it forms or previous candles. But plus sign doji has greater amount of indecision and is more significant than the long leg doji, because in long leg doji, buyers and sellers were more active in the session. In compared to spinning tops, long leg doji is more significant, because in spinning tops we have body, but here in long leg doji we don't have any activity from buyers and sellers between open and close, and this shows greater amount of indecision. Cross doji and inverted cross doji. Cross doji is similar to hammer and hanging man, and inverted cross doji is similar to inverted hammer and shooting star. The only difference is that here in cross doji and inverted cross doji, the open and close are approximately equal, and we don't have any activity between open and close, which shows greater amount of indecision. So cross doji and inverted cross doji are more significant in giving any possibilities for changing in the direction of the price, and they can be considered the ideal version of those candles. The interpretation of cross doji and inverted cross doji are exactly similar to hammer and shooting star, so here I don't repeat again the interpretation and how the buyers and sellers battled behind the scene. Just know that cross doji is naturally bullish, but being bullish or bearish depends on where it forms. Forming in the bottom following a decline or near support level, it shows buying pressure and gives the possibility of changing in the direction of the price. And forming following an advance or near resistance level, it shows selling pressure and gives the possibility that the price may change direction. The reason why in this situation it becomes bearish, as I explained for hanging man if you remember, because the price is in top, for example near a resistance level, but sellers were aggressive and strong enough to push the price down significantly. In fact, it shows increased selling pressure when the price is actually on top, so it gives the possibility of changing in the direction of the price. And inverted cross doji is naturally bearish, but the interpretation of being bullish or bearish depends on where it forms. If it forms following an advance or near resistance levels, it's bearish, showing selling pressure and gives the possibility that the price may turn. And when it forms following declines or near support levels, it's bullish and it shows buying pressure. As I explained, the reason of being bullish in the situation is that we have signs of increased buying pressure in the bottom, which gives the possibility of changing in the direction of the price. Dragonfly doji and gravestone doji. Dragonfly doji is similar to cross doji, but here we don't have upper shadow. Actually, the open, close, and high are equal. And gravestone doji is similar to inverted cross doji, but here we don't have lower shadow, and the open, close, and low are equal. The interpretation, nature, and signals of dragonfly doji and gravestone doji are exactly similar to cross doji and inverted cross doji, so I don't repeat it here again. Just the only difference is that dragonfly doji and gravestone doji are more significant, and they are actually considered the ideal version of the cross doji and inverted cross doji. And the last one is called 4-price doji. In this doji, open, close, high, and low are equal, and we only have one horizontal line, and it shows the ultimate indecision, greater amount of indecision in compared to plus sign doji. But 4-price doji is not very common and it rarely forms on the charts. Alright, that's it. In this first episode we talked about the basics of the candlesticks, the way they are made, different kinds of candles, their interpretations, and how they help us to analyze the behavior and actions of buyers and sellers to realize their status and possible next movements. In next episode, we'll talk about candlestick patterns, and you will learn some amazing patterns that will help you a lot in your trading. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope it has been helpful for you. If you found any value in this video, please like it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell so you get the notifications of my new videos. See you guys in next episode, and good luck with your trading.